Our Senior Advisor for Foreign Policy and National Security, Rick Grenell, is joining us live now. Rick, I want to go right to you. This has been a theme as we've been talking to you. It's the idea of what's going on in the world that we're not paying attention to that is very important. I mean, one of the issues that is getting some attention today is what we're seeing in China and the Chinese aggression towards Taiwan, and the idea that this has been the makings of what would potentially be the moniker of the next World War III if all the parties engaged that have various treaties and agreements get involved. And the reason why we're talking about it is because the aggressive moves by China, 52 different aircraft, we have fighter aircraft, they are taking aggressive steps and sending a message to one of our allies. And it's one of our allies, Rick, that can shoot back at a certain point as well.
Look, and I don't think it's just about China and Taiwan, but I think it's about America. Look, our listeners, if you're not paying attention, let me just be very blunt. The weakness of the Joe Biden administration is causing chaos in the world. We've seen it in Afghanistan. We've seen it with Russia. There's 100,000 troops on the border in Ukraine. We see it all over, every part of the world. And now what we're seeing it really unfold in the Pacific, where the Chinese are beginning to do things that they would have never thought to do in the Trump administration. So while there's a lot of people that can complain about Donald Trump's tweets or things that they didn't like about the Trump administration, you really have to look at the dangerous precedent that's being set by a weak President Biden.
You know, Rick, another one of these issues I'm looking at too, I think it goes to the weakness level, but it was one that I know the Trump administration was very involved in, and that was that on the one hand, we've got China, an adversary, taking these moves, and we have to stand up with our ally. But we still are seeing these issues with Turkey, who is supposed to be our NATO ally, and this delivery of a missile system, not from the United States, not from the Western allies, but the S-400 missile system from the Russians. They took part some of the delivery in 2019, but this was something the Trump administration was pushing back aggressively against, and for Turkey, basically warning Turkey not to install this system. And now another one of these issues where they're moving ahead. We have a NATO ally using Russian military equipment to defend itself.
Look, it's 100% unacceptable because the whole idea, the creation of NATO, is to blunt Russia, is to make sure that the Russians didn't go into Europe and take over the transatlantic alliance. And so we need to be very clear-eyed about what's happening here with our NATO ally. And I hope that the Biden administration can be just as tough on Turkey as the Trump administration. We were very clear with the Turks that if you're going to be a NATO ally, you're going to have to act like a NATO ally. And that means not buying Russian material, not having a relationship with Russia when you're a member of NATO. And of course, everybody knows we also demanded that if you're going to be in NATO, you got to pay your bills.
Yeah, and the thing about this whole issue with Turkey, Rick, is that, Erdogan is a radical Islamist de facto dictator. He has taken Turkey in a completely different direction, and they may be our NATO ally, but under his leadership, they're certainly not our friend. This is why we removed them from the F-35 fighter program under the Trump administration, because this S-400 missile system is actually designed to shoot down American aircraft. And yet our NATO allies buying it. It's really incomprehensible that they're doing this.
Look, this is a very difficult issue because, as you say, Turkey is a NATO ally. They've been a member of NATO since, I think, 1951 or something. I mean, it's really been a very long time. Look, Erdogan is unique here because he started off not like he's finishing here. And I'm very concerned about the radicalization of Erdogan over the last years. And certainly in the Trump administration, we saw it. We saw it with Pastor Brunson, and ACLJ had to get involved. Thank God that they did. But there's a whole bunch of other issues. We've seen Erdogan pick fights with the Israelis, the flotilla incident. There's been a growing problem of Erdogan. I will say that I put this issue into the same category as the Russians, the Iranians, the North Koreans, and the Chinese Taiwan issue, in that Turkey was not flexing this much muscle when Trump was in charge, but they feel once again with Biden in charge that there's some wiggle room, and they're going to test that wiggle room.
Just circling back to China, Rick, if this was to escalate, because I want to underscore it to people, because that's why it gets any news at all, is that if it does escalate, it is a serious. I mean, we're talking about conflict with China. We've got agreements to defend Taiwan. I mean, obviously, we have a president. You have to. He's going to make the call on these decisions on that, but so does the rest of the world. I mean, this involves basically the entire world.
Look, I think the Pacific and the Middle East and a whole bunch of regions, Eastern Europe, the Balkans, are all wishing that Donald Trump was in the White House, because when they see Joe Biden and then they see the Chinese react like this, I think the Taiwanese are very nervous. They've got to be looking at the Afghanistan example and saying to themselves, is this a president? Is this a U.S. president that's going to have the clear vision? Here are the issues, and we are going to have to send a strong message to China. I'm not sure that they have that confidence.
All right, Rick, thanks for joining us today.